What's going on, everyone? Wanted to reach out and touch base on the incident that many people are talking about in the police community. That is the shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. by the Philadelphia Police Department, which recently occurred. By now, many of you have seen the video. After this video gets edited, we will try to loop the video in of the shooting. There is cell phone footage of the shooting by a friend of Wallace. And from what we're told, the body cam footage is going to be released soon, within the next few days. That's what we're reading. For those of you that reached out and asked me about what I thought about this shooting, thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of people have, of course, shared the video, sent the post, and said, hey, what do you think about this? I think it is, once again, another tragedy. And now you have the family of the victim saying that he suffered from bipolar disorder. He was having some kind of mental health episode. And there are some details that I've been told from local officers and other outlets. So I'm going to share that here just for those of you asking. And I'm going to share my opinion of the take on what happened. So, of course, we want to know where you're tuning in from. If you live in Philadelphia, please go ahead and comment below. Let me know where you're tuning in from, where in the country you're tuning in from. And if you're outside the country tuning in, watching this right now, go ahead and let me know. So the thing about this is that mental health, again, is playing a role here. This is something that we've seen now time and time again, where someone who is not mentally well is dealing with the police, is in an interaction with the police. And, I want to share something that I got from the mental health professionals that I've spoken to over the last couple of months following some of these incidents. And what they have told me is pretty telling. And what they've told me collectively from the handful of mental health professionals I've spoken to is very telling. I'm going to share that toward the end as well. So we have over 50 police officers injured in the aftermath, which is another story we're going to get to as well. So, something that most people don't know is that the police were called to the residence of Mr. Wallace multiple times. There are reports that when this incident occurred, it was in fact the third time the police had been called to this home. Apparently, Mr. Wallace was not well and was having some kind of episode. So they were called, from what we're hearing, 3 times. So now on the third time when they arrived, now we're not sure if the police arrived previously or if they were just called 3 times. Philadelphia is a very busy police department. So it's not unusual for a call to go out, and because calls are what's called stacked, officers are unable to respond to that call, and then the people calling for the police call again and call again. So we're not sure if the officers were out there already. We believe they were out there at least once of the 3 times, and then the third and final time they responded, and that's when Mr. Wallace was waving the knife around. His family is the one that called 911 multiple times. Now, there are members of his family that are saying that they called 911 because they were looking to get an ambulance to come to their home to take Mr. Wallace to the hospital for evaluation because he was having a mental health episode. So in most places, if you need an ambulance, you got to call 911. You can't call the ambulance direct. So that makes sense, right? But also when you call 911, and although it's for a medical or mental health episode, the police are automatically dispatched. Well, apparently on this third call, it was made, the police were made aware that, and this is what I'm hearing, that he had a knife. So the police arrive on location. Once again, they're called by the family, and Mr. Wallace has a knife. They order him to drop the knife. Now, not only are they telling him to drop the knife, but all of Mr. Wallace's apparent family and friends are yelling at Mr. Wallace to drop the knife. Obviously, he's having some kind of mental episode, and they are pleading with him to drop the knife. And he doesn't drop the knife. So in the video, and like I said, I'll try to have the team loop it in, you see the officers circling, and Mr. Wallace is following them, okay? And they are backing up, which we always say in training as police officers, you don't want to back up, because if you back up and you trip and fall, you hit a bumper of a car, you hit a bicycle that's in the street, whatever, and you fall, that person with the knife can close the distance on you very quickly, and they're going to be able to do a lot of bad things to you. So, and you're going to be on your back. So that's why they say police officers or anything in a tactical situation, you should never back up. But they were backing up, and they were kind of doing this like walking backwards, do-si-do, right? They're going backwards, and he's coming toward them. And finally, when he makes what looks to be like a aggressive move toward them, still waving the knife, presenting the knife with his friends, and apparently his own mother, Mr. Wallace's mother, apparently was there, pleading with him to put the knife down. And he went for the officers. The officers shot him. Apparently they tried to, this is something I think a lot of people don't know. The ambulance wasn't able even to get there. They actually loaded Mr. Wallace into a patrol car, from what I hear, and transported him to the hospital, and he expired at the hospital. First things first, and people ask me this, as a police officer, they said, hey, you were a cop, what's the protocol? So the protocol is when you have someone having a mental health episode, the ambulance personnel, meaning the EMTs or paramedics, whoever is responding to the scene, they do not go into the scene. They don't pull up to the house. They don't go into the house. They don't make contact with the person who is having the mental health episode until the scene is deemed safe. Okay, so for the people who are saying, why didn't the police just let the ambulance people go to the house and deal with him? That's why. The ambulance people are scared. They're not armed. So if the call comes in that there is someone who's having a mental health episode and they are armed with a knife, they have a knife, okay, then they could kill someone. The ambulance people who don't have a vest on, they don't have a taser, they don't have a gun, they're just normal, regular people, right, in an ambulance with some first aid training, they're not going to go there until the scene is safe. So the protocol is, and this was with my agency and agencies across the country, the police go in, they secure the scene, they make sure the person's calm. If he has a weapon, they try to get the weapon away from him. And then once everything is calm, they radio and tell the ambulance. The ambulance is probably sitting down the street, right, down the block waiting. And then they tell the ambulance scene is safe, scene is clear, and the ambulance rolls in and they go ahead and they make contact with that individual. That's how it works. That's a protocol almost universally, okay? I don't know any agency where they send the ambulance members in blindly when there's a subject mentally ill armed and the police just show up whenever, or the police don't show up at all. I've never heard that in my life before. So, now let's talk about the point where people are talking about mental health professionals, where people are saying, why didn't they? It's almost like a joke now, but let's not joke about it, right? Let's be serious. People are saying, and some people don't know. Some people don't know the job. So a lot of these people who are making these claims about social workers, they just don't know the job. They're talking, it's like someone who's never put a roof on a house talking about how a roof should be laid on a house. You've never put one on a roof. You never stepped foot on a roof. Yet you're telling roofers how the roof should be laid. Well, if you've never done the job, you really don't have a place to talk about how the job should be done. that's aside. A lot of that going on in society, especially with social media. So how it works is this. If a social worker is called, and sometimes they are called directly. So sometimes family have access to a helpline for mental health, and either the person who is having the episode or their family will call that social helpline, okay? And they'll say, I'm not doing well, I'm thinking of hurting myself, or the family will call and say, my son is not doing well, he's thinking of maybe hurting himself, he has a knife, what have you, he took some pills, we need someone to come out. In those situations, typically, even if the person does not have a weapon, that social services agency, that social worker, will call the police and request what's called a police escort, meaning the social worker drives to the house in their own car and they wait for the police. And then when the police arrive, the police officer, and I've done this countless times as an officer, the police officer with the social worker by their side walks to the door, we knock on the door, and we say, hey, Joe, what's going on? You know, your mom called, said you're not doing too well. Maybe you're not taking your medication. Said, you know, you're maybe thinking about hurting yourself. I'm here with Susie. She's a social worker. She's a mental health professional. Do you mind if we come in and talk to you? Do you mind if Susie comes in and has a word with you? You don't have any weapons around you or anything, right? Okay, do you mind if I just make sure you don't have anything on you for her safety? Okay, great. All right, why don't you step out here to the front porch? I'm going to just give you a quick pat down. Okay, got no weapons on you. Great. Why don't we just stand out here for a few minutes and talk, right? Because you want to keep them from going back inside and being in the kitchen, maybe if they can grab a knife, you know, whatever. So the social workers ask the police for that. They want to make sure that they are safe because they're going in with nothing at all once again. So that was protocol by the social workers. So the people who were saying, why didn't a social worker respond? Well, first, the family didn't call a social worker. They called 911 for an ambulance. When you call 911 for an ambulance, like I said, the police are automatically dispatched. Number two, had his mother or his fiance or his wife, whoever it was that was there, called social services and said, my son is not feeling well. He's talking crazy. He's bipolar and something's wrong. We need help. We need a social worker to come out. The social worker would have called the police and requested a police escort, and the police would have shown up anyway. Believe me, that social worker is not just going to say, oh, okay, yep, I'll be right there, and not call the police and just drive her little, Honda or Prius over to their house and get out and say, hey, Mr. Wallace, hey, I'm here to talk to you, while he's there waving around a knife. Not going to happen. Doesn't happen. Okay? It just doesn't happen. All right? They would have, and anyone wants to ask a question, go ahead and put the question up. I will try my best to answer it. Okay? So, for those saying, why wasn't a social worker called there? And had they called a social worker, that's exactly what would have happened. The social worker would have called the police, and 99.9%, 100% requested a police escort, right? Okay, so that's that. We see what happens in the video. The video's online, circling around, and they shoot Mr. Wallace Jr., and he passes away. Now, what happens afterwards is even crazy. The riots that ensue afterwards, where now a police officer is run over, they're injuring police officers. It's at the point where even people who were in support of the anti-violence against black people by the police, even some of those people are now saying, hey, hold on a second. The guy attacked the police with a knife. It's on video. What did you want them to do? Get stabbed? Did you want them to just to keep running and let him stab somebody else? Clearly, his family and those around him, his neighbors, were concerned. That's why they called 911. So they were concerned about what he might do to them. Because if they weren't concerned about that, they wouldn't have called. They were worried about his safety and their safety. So now you have this situation where he has a knife. He's chasing two police officers who have their guns drawn, right? And his friends are all backing away, videotaping. I got to tell you something, and this is just me. It means nothing. But if I have a friend that is not mentally well and has a knife, and next thing I know, I see the police show up, I'm going to go in front of him and say, bro, the cops are here. They're going to shoot you. You need to drop this knife right now. And I'm going to get in his face. And I'm going to say, what are you going to stab me? You're going to stab me, your friend? But none of his friends are seen stepping up. In the beginning of the video, there's a woman that some are saying is his mother that was trying to control him, but he got away from her. And then at the end, she comes back in after he's been shot. I don't know if that was his mother or his fiance or wife. And you even see in the video, she's angry, so she throws something at the police. And people are saying stuff about that, like, oh, she threw something at the police. She should have been locked up. Listen, someone she loved just got shot by the police. She was angry. So yes, she threw something, whatever in her hand, she threw it at the cops. She was angry, okay? She's emotional. Someone she loves just got shot. Cut her some slack. I think she threw her phone at the cops. So I don't know why no one intervened there. Everyone stood back with their cell phone filming, but none of his boys jumped in and was like, come on, man, this is stupid. This is dumb. Don't do this, bro. Because we all kind of have been with that friend who's maybe really drunk and is about to do something stupid, and maybe they're angry at someone else and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go kick that guy's butt, right? And they're angry and they're ready to swing. But they're not gonna swing at you. If you get in front of them and say, bro, this is stupid, you're not gonna hit me. I know you're not gonna hit me. Because if you hit me, it's on. Let's not be dumb. No one did it. Nobody stepped in. Right now, in this time in our society, we know. It's funny because the guy who's filming even says in the video, oh no, oh what? Oh, why'd they have to shoot him so many times? He knew that the police were going to shoot him. Notice he didn't say in the video, and we're going to try to loop it in on the edit when this will be on YouTube. He didn't say why'd they shoot him. It wasn't said. He said, why'd they have to shoot him so many times? He knew his friend was about to be shot. He knew it. And rather than getting out of his car and going up to his friend and getting in the way, grabbing him, tackling him, doing something, why he just continued to videotape. And then after his friend is shot, he's like, oh, why'd they have to shoot him so many times? Not, oh, why'd they have to shoot him? He knew he was getting shot. He knew his friend was going to get shot. That's why he was in his car, right? He didn't get out of his car. That guy didn't even get out of his car. He wasn't dumb. He knew shots were probably about to be fired. Right? He knew shots were about to be fired. I hate to say it, but in these neighborhoods, a lot of these guys are street smart. They're street smart. They know when shots are about to be fired. So, very sad to see this. Very sad to watch this happen. Here's someone who has a mental health issue, and it's to that point where the police arrive, and now a threat is made, and the police, what do they have? They didn't have tasers. Those officers, that's another fact. The officers that arrived to that scene did not have tasers. I don't know why they did not have tasers. Philadelphia Police Department, a large police department. I find it hard to believe that in 2020, a police department like the Philadelphia Police Department doesn't have tasers, but hey, there's funding issues. Everyone's calling to defund the police, right? But maybe it's a funding issue. They didn't have tasers. And as we know, we've seen in recent weeks, even officers who shoot someone with a taser, like the female officer who was stabbed in Chicago. She shot the man with a taser who was coming after her with literally a butcher knife, and he got back up and came at her and was able to stab her multiple times in the chest. Thankfully, she was wearing her vest, and her partners had to shoot and kill the man. So even the taser is not guaranteed. But the cops, for those of you wondering, these cops did not have tasers. And tasers aren't mandatory, just when there's funding available and training available, you know. So I think we're going to have to get to the point where something has to come about. Something needs to be invented to help stop someone who's charging you with a knife, maybe, that's mentally ill. I mean, a person who's not mentally ill, you know, there's something to be said that anyone who charges the police with a knife clearly has something mentally wrong with them, because it's almost like suicide, right? But this person legit had a mental disorder, Mr. Wallace Jr., and was clearly not thinking, right? Right? He was clearly not thinking. And it ended up with him losing his life. And I don't know what the resolve is going to be, but I'll tell you what the resolve, or what is going to bring zero resolve. Zero resolve will come from burning your city down, looting your businesses owned by black people, and trying to harm police officers. That accomplishes nothing. That's not going to bring Mr. Wallace back. And that is not going to stop the next person who's mentally ill and suffering from mental illness from attacking the police with a weapon. Now, I'll end on this. In the past few weeks, I've spoken to multiple mental health professionals. And I posed this question. I said, how much money would you need to be paid in order to drive around with the police in the police car for when they go to a call like this, where someone has a weapon, is mentally ill, has mental illness, and now you, when you arrive to the scene, this person's running around waving a knife, you have to get out of the car with the police officer. You don't have a gun, you don't have a vest, you don't have a taser, you don't have anything. You got to get out of the car with your clipboard, let the police officer get out of the car, and before the police officer makes any kind of contact with this person, you have to walk up and try to calm this person down that's waving a knife around. I said, how much would you need to get paid? And the answer was unanimous. You couldn't pay me enough. All of them. All of them said you couldn't pay me. One of them said $1 million. $1 million. But all of them said the same thing. Men and women. I talked to mental health professionals that were men, and I talked to mental health professionals that were women. And I gave them that scenario. You got to ride around with the police just in case they have an incident like this, and then you got to make first contact. How much would you like to be paid, or how much would you need to be paid? Because they get paid for seeing clients for counseling in their office by the hour, right? For an hour session. They all said you couldn't pay me enough. Are you crazy? No way. You couldn't pay me enough. I'm not armed. I don't have any training. No, you got to use your voice. You're a mental health professional. Now, here's the funny thing. The funny thing was, three of them mentioned, and this is unanimous. They said, by the way, do you know that when we go to school to become doctors for mental health, we're not taught how to deal with people who are armed with a weapon, who are having like a manic episode. And I said, they don't teach you that in medical school when you're training to become a psychologist or psychiatrist? And they all said, no, there's no class on that. There's no schooling for that. There's no course on that. I said, really? They said, yeah, really. They don't teach us how to deal with crazy people armed with a weapon. And I said, so why are all these people saying that mental health professionals should be social workers should be going to these calls rather than the police? And they all said, I don't know. I don't know who came up with social workers. Maybe some politician came up with that. But social workers sure as hell didn't say, send us in unarmed, send us in untrained. They said they were never taught that, how to deal with that in school, in medical school. I was blown away. I even thought, I was like, come on, you have to have some kind of training in school to learn how to deal with. Nope. I couldn't believe it. So for all those people who are saying, send a social worker, before you say send a social worker, ask a social worker, would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to do that? And how much would you need to get paid in order to do that? I think their answer will unanimously be the same as the answer I got from the small crew of mental health professionals that I spoke to. So that's just some food for thought. Terrible incident. Share your thoughts in the comments below on maybe what you think. If you are in law enforcement, if you're in law enforcement, or if you are in the mental health field, share your comments as to what you think can help resolve this. But the fact of the matter is, the riots and the looting and the burning, it's all lost. It's lost its luster now, because you can't have someone attack the police with a knife and have the police shoot them and say, okay, this is police brutality, and it's on video. It's on video. So now it's just silly, and now people are losing faith in the cause. People who support that you had at one point, now you're rioting and looting. Now you're losing those people. So, need to think about that. Be safe. Remember, watch your hands, watch your six, and be safe.